Hey everyone, Erick Stakelbeck here. Today on the Newscast, Israel conducts a major air defense drill from land and sea as it readies for that gathering Iranian storm. Get all the breaking details coming up. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. We've been telling you over the past few weeks that the Iranian regime is threatening revenge over the death of its nuclear mastermind, Moshsen Fakrizadeh. Now, Fakrizadeh was killed outside of Tehran on November 27th, and Iran's leaders are blaming Israel for his demise. Just yesterday, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani once again threatened retaliation against what he called the Zionist entity, Israel, over Fakrizadeh's death. Now, I found this very interesting, folks, because over the past few years, the mainstream media and Western diplomats have told us that Rouhani is the great moderate in the Iranian regime. I guess not. Now, over the weekend, on a special Weekend Update Watchman Newscast, you can find it here in our archives on YouTube, we talked about possible ways that Iran would retaliate, God forbid, against Israel or against the United States or against possibly Sunni Arab nations in the region in the wake of Fakrizadeh's death. And really the major component of their revenge strategy would most likely be missiles, in particular perhaps cruise missiles or even ballistic missiles. Now, very interesting timing for what we're going to talk about today. In light of that, the missile threat from Iran and its allies, Israel just conducted a major air defense drill. We're going to give you all the breaking details. They just announced today, did the Israel Defense Forces and the Israeli Defense Ministry, that they conducted this test this month, apparently in central Israel, in conjunction with the United States. Folks, big news, and again, I do not think the timing of this test and the announcement is a coincidence. We're going to get into it in a minute. Before I do, I just want to encourage you to subscribe to the Watchman News channel right here on YouTube and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. We are bringing you the kind of cutting-edge, timely, breaking analysis that you just won't get anywhere else. Certainly not in the mainstream media, the great fans, the great champions of Hassan Rouhani. Okay, let's get into it. Israel conducts this major air defense drill. And folks, the really interesting aspect of this is that all three layers of Israel's missile defense system were involved. Number one, you had the Iron Dome system. Number two, you had David's Sling system. And number three, you had the Arrow missiles that Israel uses, all involved in this air defense drill, which took place on land and sea. These anti-aircraft missiles were launched from land and sea. So a multi-tiered, multi-layered air defense drill. This was a big deal. And according to Israeli officials, this was a world first in that these three systems were able to communicate with each other during this drill. Now, a little bit of background. The Iron Dome system, obviously, you have heard a lot about that over the past few years. Whenever these Hamas rockets are incoming from Gaza, we've seen so much of this, obviously, over the past decade plus. Iron Dome steps up to defense and has had an incredible success rate in shooting down these rockets coming out of Gaza. Now, I think back to the 2014 war, the summer of 2014, between Israel and Hamas out of Gaza. Iron Dome was just legendary in its performance rate in that war, in shooting down these rockets that were just coming out of Gaza on just a regular clip. So Iron Dome has a very excellent success rate, I would say. But the key thing about this air defense drill that just took place this month in central Israel is that Iron Dome, for the first time, showed the capability to shoot down cruise missiles. Folks, that is a big deal. Cruise missiles are pretty advanced, as you might guess. Look, the rockets coming out of Gaza from Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad are deadly, but they don't have the accuracy that a cruise missile would have. Remember, a cruise missile can evade anti-aircraft missiles. They are highly advanced, even more so than ballistic missiles. Ballistic missiles, look, they follow the path and they hit the target. Iran, by the way, possesses them. But cruise missiles are just another notch up. So Iron Dome showed the capability to shoot down cruise missiles during this drill. Major development to my mind, and a message sent to the Iranian regime and to Israel's enemies. Now, once again, Israel conducted this test in conjunction with the U.S. Missile Defense Agency. Just another sign of that incredible relationship between the United States and Israel, which has only grown under the Trump administration. Raytheon, an American company, was there, in addition to Rafael Systems, which helps in development of David Sling and these other Israeli air defense systems. So great conjunction and cooperation there between Israel and the United States in this drill. Also, we had David Sling operating during this drill, and the Arrow missiles. The Arrow missiles are specifically used to target ballistic missiles that would come from enemy nations or terror organizations. So the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, and the Israeli Defense Ministry are saying this was a highly successful test. All of the major Israeli news outlets are covering this. I'm not sure that the Western mainstream media will pick it up. That's why we really wanted today on the Watchman Newscast to bring you this breaking news, because, folks, I don't think this was just any air defense drill. Number one, as Israeli officials shared today, this is kind of a world first in that all three of these systems kind of work together simultaneously. And number two, the timing, which we'll talk about more in a minute. But Jerusalem Post, Times of Israel, all the major Israeli outlets are picking this up. Here's a quote from the Times of Israel. I'll just read it right off my phone. The head of Israel's defense ministry's Israeli Missile Defense Organization told reporters that an air defense exercise of this scope had never before been performed. Though other air defense tests have simulated the ability of various systems to communicate with one another, and others have tested the ability of systems to shoot down incoming targets, simulating missiles and aircraft, it was the first exercise today, or this month in Israel. It was the first exercise on this scale to test both at the same time, missiles and aircraft. These systems could shoot down aircraft. Think of those unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, which Iran and Hezbollah have used. So this test targeted incoming missiles and drones. This was a test that was previously unknown in the world, said one Israeli official, and he also added that this has led to a capability that currently only Israel has. Wow. He described the test as a phenomenal success. Once again, you see that groundbreaking Israeli innovation, Israeli ingenuity, and with the help, of course, of the United States, that great partnership, that great alliance there. And hey, it makes sense, right? Israel's enemies are America's enemies. I speak as an American. It's just a common sense thing, folks. Israel's enemies and America's enemies are one in the same. So, of course, the United States has a vested interest in bolstering Israel's defenses, because Israel is the first line of defense for the West. And if Israel goes down, we all go down. Does anyone watching right now really think that if the Iranian regime and its allies got their way and they wiped the Zionist entity off the map, do you really think they would kind of pack up their bags and go home and say, our work is done here? No. Where are they coming next? If you live in the West, that gives you a good idea of the answer. The good news is that not only is Israel prepared, as we're talking about today with this air defense drill, the first of its kind, but also the God of Israel still sits on the throne, and he neither slumbers nor sleeps. And we've read the book, and we know how this story ends. On to the timing real quick of this test and the air defense drill. I think it's obvious. On the Sunday, let's see, what was Sunday? I'm losing track. December 12th, Watchman Newscast. It was a special weekend update. We talked about possible retaliation for Fakrizadeh's death. We gave a few possible scenarios. All of them seemed to involve missiles and drones, which is exactly what this air defense drill targeted, coming out of perhaps Gaza, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, 2 Iranian proxies there, coming out of Syria, where Iran has fired missiles at Israel before from Syrian soil, and obviously the Iranian regime and Hezbollah have a very strong presence there, coming perhaps out of southern Lebanon, where, look, Hezbollah has some 150,000 rockets and missiles pointed at every inch of Israel. And the interesting wrinkle there that we talked about over the weekend also was, don't forget Yemen. The Houthis in Yemen, it's not too far away from Israel, and they have missile capabilities. They've launched missiles at Saudi Arabia several times. And lastly, Western Iraq, where there are various Iranian-backed Shia militias, radical Shia militias, who have obviously launched rockets at the U.S. Embassy and U.S. interests inside Iraq. Could they also reach Israel? Do they have that capability and that range? So obviously, Israel is preparing here for all contingencies, and I believe sending a message to Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and all of the radical actors in the region that, hey, we are very prepared for any contingency. That includes ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, the kind of rockets that Hamas launches out of Gaza. It includes unmanned drones, which could be packed with explosives. Israel is saying, we are ready. You can threaten, you can breathe threats of retaliation, but we are ready for any contingency, any scenario. So I wanted to give you a breaking update there. Again, this was just announced today. I'm not very sure that the mainstream media will cover this, but it is a major development, folks. As we described, a world first to have all of Israel's various air defense capabilities coordinate together and against various threats. And from land and sea, they launched these anti-aircraft missiles. So very interesting development, especially with everything we've been talking about and tensions running very, very high in the region. Hey, before we go, it is the Christmas season. I know we're talking about some heavy stuff here. Not always easy to transition to Christmas and joy when you're talking about Iran and their wicked plans, but we have a great Christmas offer here for you at the Watchman Newscast. Our good friends at Artza have these Artza box subscriptions. Now, right now, for this season, the winter season, there's seasonal subscriptions. Right now, there is a Bethlehem box, an Artza box from Bethlehem. You can go to artzabox.com, use the discount code Watchman18. You see the information there on your screen. And what you will receive when you receive an Artza box, this season, it's from Bethlehem. The last box was from Nazareth. The Bethlehem box, just in time for Christmas, obviously, and from the place of Christ's birth, Bethlehem, it includes Israeli-made products made by artisans and entrepreneurs and small businesses in Israel. So if you've never been to Israel, or you've been maybe once and just haven't been able to get back, this is the perfect gift for you. Or if you're like me and you get to Israel frequently, but over the past year, with all the COVID travel restrictions, you have not been able to go, hey, this will give you a taste, a sight, a sound, a smell of Israel. We did an unboxing, an Artza box unboxing, which was fun just a few weeks ago here on the Newscast. You can check it out on our archives here on YouTube. But I love it because you are fulfilling, number one, Genesis 12:3, you're blessing Israel through blessing Israeli companies and small businesses and the Israeli economy. Look, Israel, like all of us, has taken a major hit because of COVID restrictions, lots of serious lockdowns there over these past several months. So it's great to be able to bless Israel and bolster the Israeli economy, bolster Israeli entrepreneurs and small businesses by having an Artza box subscription. And what a conversation piece, right? What a unique gift at Christmas where you can show your guest at your Christmas party, wow, this is from Bethlehem. Hey, we're talking about Christ being born in Bethlehem. Guess what? Here are products straight from the very place where the Savior came into the world. Again, it's artzabox.com and the discount code is Watchman18. So be sure to take advantage of this great offer just in time for Christmas. Hey, thanks for joining us today on the Watchman Newscast. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.